Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, so welcome everybody. I am going to switch gears now, and I'm going to be presenting my screen to you. Okay, so I'd like to start off by saying that this is a presentation. Most of the trainings that I've done have been tutorials. This is a presentation, so there's not a whole lot of interaction. And for that reason, I'm going to be asking you every once in a while just to keep your attention to type something into the chat screen. While I'm presenting, I can't see the chat, so please unmute yourself. I'll go in and look every once in a while, but other than that, please unmute yourself if you'd like to say something. For those of you that just joined in the last minute or so, oops, hold on, I'm going to let someone. For those of you who joined in the last minute or so, I shared the link to today's presentation with you. So I did that specifically because I'd like you to open it up on your phone. Okay, so this is about how to design and format content for smartphones. So it's some tips specifically for smart screens. And the data from our recent technology support survey indicated that about 2/3 of adult learners who are engaged in instruction use a smartphone uniquely to access learning resources. And that data came from a survey that I put out back in late March, early April maybe. 45 teachers responded from 18 different organizations. And one of the questions, two of the questions actually, made a distinction between smartphones and basic cell phones. And in light of the high number of students that were learning only with smartphones, I put together some tips that instructional designers use when creating instruction for mobile learning. So if the majority of your learners are learning by smartphone, I'd like for you to go into the chat and put an S for smartphone. If you don't know in the chat, if you're not sure if they are or not, go ahead and put in a question mark. Okay. Great. Okay. So I made a distinction between smartphone and mobile learning for the purpose of this presentation, and it's about screen size. Normally in education and training, we use the term mobile learning because that refers to the access of learning resources through any device that's portable, including smartphones, tablets, and even laptops. But smartphones have a smaller screen than tablets, so I wanted to focus specifically on designing content for very small screens. So in this presentation, we'll be looking at the how-to of designing instruction for smartphones. You can take these ideas and plug in the content. And this presentation that I'm doing on the slide deck models the guidelines that I'll be sharing. So that's why I wanted to specifically ask you to look at it on your smartphone so you can see how it looks. So when you're thinking about content design, your mission is to think about ways to simplify the content and create an engaging and easy to follow lesson and be consistent in what you design. And we'll be looking in detail at those in the next 50 minutes or so. Some of the things that you'll want to consider are the cognitive load. A lot of mental effort is required because of the limitation of screen size. So with less room on a screen and information, the learner needs to remember content from earlier screens, then process it and respond to that content. Versus on a computer, we can see all of the content on one page, we can skim it, we can scan it, we can scroll up and down, and we're constantly working with our short memory or our working memory. And then on a smartphone, we pair this with the physical interaction of scrolling and swiping and waiting for pages to load and maybe figuring out how to navigate. Sometimes, as you know, our eyes, our neck, our shoulders become fatigued. So the cost of this interaction means less effort is available for processing and learning. Learner engagement. For asynchronous learning, students often engage between other activities for short periods of time. I know that in speaking with many of you, you've expressed the challenges of engaging learners because now they have their children at home. So either they have childcare or they're helping their children with homeschooling. So often we can assume that our learners have only a couple of minutes, 10 or 15 minutes, or maybe even less, in between tasks or, in between higher priority activities throughout the day. And this heightens, the current environment with the added responsibilities. So we're trying to think about how to design content for short periods of time. The navigation, we also know, is different. The mouse pointer is replaced by gestures, touching, pinching, and swiping. So we want to consider these three basic differences when planning. So we need to think differently and design differently. And now we'll get into the tips. So I'm using Google Slides because this is a training presentation. You can apply these guidelines using Google Docs. You can upload them onto Google Classroom. You can use these design tips for designing things that will be accessed through an online whiteboard or any other tool that you use to deliver content. But the key is to open it on your own phone and see how it looks. The overarching structure that I would like to recommend is, number one, micro-learning, which means create content in small and manageable pieces. Micro-learning is bite-sized chunks of learning, and it's intended to be completed in 3 to 15 minutes. It relates to the structure of the content, and these learning activities can stand alone, or they can connect to other bite-sized learning pieces. The main point is that the content focuses on an individual learning objective. Consider providing the micro-learning for asynchronous study. Like we just discussed about learner engagement, they're engaging for short periods of time and intermittently, possibly. So if you can create things for asynchronous learning, that would allow students to pick up their phone, engage when they have time, knowing that they might have distractions and interruptions, and then pause anytime and resume where they left off. So typically, mobile learning is designed for small time slots rather than long periods of engagement. Now, because we are trying very hard to keep our learners engaged, one of the recommendations that we have from the Tech Hub and also from other organizations like Mockingbird Education is to schedule focused check-ins. Scheduling regular check-ins with students individually or small groups with focused discussion questions that are academically based, we hope will help build community and keep learners engaged. The ideal scenario would be group discussions about content and then individual check-ins. But the most important thing is that you schedule them consistently. So whatever schedule you come up with, maintain it as consistently as possible. And you might have several people or no one show up, but schedule them for small time chunks using whatever tool is working for you and your learners, like WhatsApp or Zoom or Google Meet, or use several different ones, or maybe there will be just by phone. So the first the first tip, rather, that I'd like to share with you about designing content is to simplify. And you can simplify it by choosing 1 to 3 main points on each screen. This should be the essential information only. And simplifying doesn't mean diluting or oversimplification. It just means concentrating on one learning objective, keeping it short by limiting the text, and including the must-know or the essential information only. The should-know information can be linked. If you think you can simplify content easily enough, put an S in the chat box, please. Okay, good. Oh, sorry. The next thing that we'll be looking at is layout. So the most important information at the top tells the learner what to focus on. Don't crowd objects. Leave plenty of space between learning objects like text, links, images, and videos. And you can reduce graphics and videos to allow more space. That would allow more space, but it also reduces the time it takes for them to load. And we know that students have different kinds of data plans, so we want to be considerate of that. So I'm not going to give you a lot of detail, but you're welcome to check in with me on any of the drop-in hours. I think everybody knows how to resize images and copy and paste them. If you don't, again, visit me on one of the drop-in hours. But videos can be reduced by reducing the quality. And I linked it here so that you can click on that at another time and get some tips on how to reduce the quality. Actually, I demonstrated it earlier today for the meet. I told you how to go into settings. So typically you go into settings, you look for quality, and you can reduce it to make the video upload more quickly. You can improve readability by doing the following. The first thing is that if there's lengthy text that you want your learners to have access to, provide an overview or the summary. Now, this might not work for all activities, and it will likely depend on your learning objective. But I have shared the link to this presentation with you, and I'd like for you to look at it, and you can see also the difference of having, very short, essential information. I've purposely have shortened each of the kind of bullet points, so to speak. And I've also put this entire presentation in 30-point font size. And when you open it up on your phone, I put this one sentence in there. This is 18-point font size, so you can see the difference. Now, when we're writing, we're typically writing in 11 or 12 points, and that would be much too small for a phone. Your student would have to keep pinching it to enlarge it. 18-point on a PowerPoint might seem pretty big in comparison to 11 or 12, but you'll notice by looking at this on your phone that it's still quite small. So 30 points is what I have designed this presentation as, and you'll see that, I hope you'll see that you can see it pretty well on your phone. The third thing that you can do that would be helpful is readers naturally tend to scan for information. So if you have information that is lends itself to headers, so they can quickly find the header and then read what's underneath it, or organize it into tables or lists, that would make your content a little bit easier to read. A couple more points is to use high contrast background and text. Like right now I have white background and black text, but you'll also notice that the header slides that I've used have blue backgrounds and white text. And if you're looking at it on your phone, I think that you'll see that that also is a contrast that makes it quite easy to read. Consider the orientation, portrait versus landscape. So if those of you that are accessing this on your phone, if you haven't already done so, put it in landscape, turn your phone to the side so it's landscape, and you'll see that it makes for a little bit bigger screen size. And I would always give the option to print. They might not have a device, but in case they do, just let them know that there's a resource for them to print, especially if it's lengthy text. A couple more things about portrait versus landscape is a basic thing about design is if a student is in portrait mode, it's better for them to scroll up and down. You always want to make sure that the length of the sentence can be seen on one screen so that they don't have to swipe left and right just to read from the beginning of the sentence to the end of it. Videos are best viewed in landscape mode. Sometimes most slide presentations, you can just automatically adjust your phone and it will change it. But whatever you're designing, look at it on your phone and you decide what the best orientation is, and then let your students know. Some ways that you can increase accessibility is to use mobile-friendly tools, such as podcasts, any of the products in Google Drive, like Docs and Slides. Common files that we use, like Word or PowerPoint, might not be accessible on your learner's phone. So they might have better luck with cloud-based products like Google Docs and Slides, or web-based resources like podcasts and videos. And on that note, generally speaking, PDFs are mobile friendly and are compatible with most types of assistive technology in case you have any learners with a disability. Let students know if it's a slide presentation or a video, and let them know if it's large so that they can expect that it's going to take some time to load. So communicate the file type and the size to them. Okay, I'd like to pause for a moment. I'm going to get out of my presentation, and I'd like to pause and ask if there's any questions. If you don't have any questions, just put an N into the chat box, and if you do have any questions, please unmute your microphone.
Hey, Sherry, this is Kim.
Hi, Kim.
I don't have a question, but I just realized on my phone, when I first opened the presentation, it opened in Google Slides, but I couldn't click on the next or the back buttons, and I couldn't click on any of the links. And I realized that I needed to go into present mode.
Yes, thank you.
Before that would work, yeah.
Great, okay. So I was going to get to the back and the next, and I will in a minute, but thank you for reminding me of that. And do me a favor, everybody, let's see, not to deal with the meta language. Video PDF. If you are right now looking at the presentation on your smartphone, can you please go in the chat and put a Y for yes, so I can just get an idea of how many of you are looking at it? Okay. Okay, just a couple of you. Okay, so I hope the rest of you will later, but the most important thing is look at what you're designing on your phone. When I was putting this presentation together, I kept going back and forth between my phone and my computer because I wanted to model the tips that I'm sharing with you today. Okay, so let me continue here. A couple of things about navigation. So consider that navigation will not be done with the mouse. So think gestures. If you put a learning object on the screen, will students touch it? Do they need to swipe? Will they need to enlarge it or want to enlarge it? So try it out on your own phone and see how it works. Touch targets like links should be large. And remember we talked about the layout, one of the ways that you can help to make that easier is have a lot of white space so they can touch it easily without accidentally closing something or swiping or missing it altogether. And have consistent and clear navigation. So there's something that I added to this slide, and I can show you if we have time at the end. You'll notice at the bottom of each slide a couple of things. Number one, I put the words back and next. So these are not hot spots. These were just directional arrows to show them if you want to go back, you swipe to the left, and if you want to go forward, you swipe to the right. You could make them as hot spots and link to the next slide. That would be a lot more complicated. For this presentation, we're not going to cover that. But in case you had a learner that was really new to this idea and maybe it wasn't intuitive to this person to just swipe left or swipe right, I put those in just as a suggestion to you. You'll notice that, and I can show you how to do that. You'll notice that I also put in a slide number. So right now we're on slide number 14. And I put this in thinking that if a learner was accessing this asynchronously and had to step out and do something with a child or whatever, they could look at it and come back and say, oh yeah, I remember I was on slide 14. So you can use the master slide view to insert back and next, and then it will just show up on all of your slides. You could also create a 2-minute or however many, a short navigational video. We typically do that, or we see that in online learning, so that the first thing that your student would do is open up maybe a 2-minute video and get an orientation into the learning resource that you're going to be used and how to navigate it. And one of those things would be, you could say, you know, at the bottom of your screen, you see back and next buttons, and you swipe back and you swipe left, and you could model it. But using the same format and tools as much as possible is another way to reduce cognitive load and make the learning path predictable and eliminate the need for learners to jump from tool to tool. So what we recommend, me and others that I'm working with about mobile learning, is to add new tools, you know, once students master one. And I think that we've been doing this now for about 3 months. I think that you've probably already figured that out, but I thought I'd stick that in there. One of the ways that you could make interactions easier is use lists like multiple choice to reduce typing. So rather than asking students to type in a long response, they could, you know, they could look at an option of A, B, or C and just type in their response like A. Or you could also allow voice submissions by letting them record their voice, their response to an answer. And if you are going to have them type, it's recommended that you kind of relax grammar rules. Now, obviously, if it's a writing or, you know, you teach the target objective is a grammar point or punctuation for ESOL, then that might not be a good idea. But if you can, depending on the lesson objective, think about allowing students to use abbreviations, excuse them for typos and incomplete sentences, and just focus on the clarity of whatever they're trying to express. So, what does microlearning look like? Before I continue, I'm going to pause again. I'd like to go back into you and ask if there's any questions. If you don't have any questions, you can type in a no, an N in the chat. And if you do have any questions, please unmute yourself and ask. Great.
Actually, Sherry, I do have
Hi.
a question.
Hi, Elizabeth. Hi.
So I remember hearing a review of, I think it was Duolingo, where somebody was saying they didn't find it a strong teaching tool because while it made you really good at multiple choice, it didn't make you good at coming up with an answer on your own. And I wondered that when we choose from a list, when we ask people to choose from a list, we're maybe we're reducing effort, but we're also reducing the challenge.
Yes, you know what? Thank you for asking that, because I should have prefaced this presentation by saying, you know, when I put this together, I was really thinking of some of the comments that I heard, that I read in the technology support survey and through the drop-in hours of how difficult it is to engage students. So I would say that from a pedagogy point of view, it may not be ideal. But if it's a way that we can reduce effort and cognitive load by engaging students, that's kind of where my perspective was in creating this presentation. So I agree with you. You know, if you want to, I personally hate typing, you know, even texting. There's people that, you know, do it 100 times faster than I do and really don't mind it. So I mean, do what you think is best for you and your learners. I was just trying to think of a way to give them activities that they could do on their phone that are short and simple, without diluting it, but at the same time, allowing them to engage in a doable way. So that's a good question, though. And actually, it's kind of a nice, does anybody else have a question? Would anybody else like to comment on Elizabeth's comment?
I would. This is Bonnie. I agree with what Elizabeth's saying, and I think that it's just a good reminder that there's no one distance learning strategy that's going to do all the things. So I think that for smartphone learning, getting that engagement, doing those quicker connections, checking off of a list, making it easy to navigate, what needs to be paired with maybe not as often, but a deeper dive, maybe via email or via a video chat, where you can really look at some concepts or practice some stuff at a deeper level.
Yes, I was thinking that, so this is thinking about ways that when you need to design content for smartphones. So whenever you can, if you're using an online tool like IXL or something that's mobile friendly, that might solve those kind of problems for you in that they're made for mobile learning. You don't have to design it. You don't have to think about the design. I was thinking that for you to present a new concept or introduce a topic, something pretty simple, and that, as I mentioned, it's for the essential information only. And then remember, one of the first screens was link to others. So I don't think that designing a ton of material for smartphones is ideal. But if you don't have, like ESOL, I feel like is probably one of the most difficult audiences, especially the low-level ESOL, to come up with content that they can access on their phone, unless you're using something like USA Learns or Duolingo or Mango Languages or some others that are made for ESOL. But if you have to design your own, I was trying to think of a way to simplify it. Okay, anything else? Okay. So speaking of simplified it, I have simplified this to show you what micro-learning could look like. So this was made for ESOL learners, and I was thinking about the lowest level. So this is target audience for beginning ESOL learners. The learning objective is to use and understand words for smartphone navigation. You could add an audio file or turn this into a video recording using a screen recording tool like Screencastify or Loom. I'm just going to go through it quickly kind of and just show you. So the idea was we were working on first 3 vocabulary words: touch, open, and download, related to online learning with their phones. Touch to open, touch to download. You could open this website. And these, by the way, are hyperlinked. So that is clearly a link, but this is also linked. If they click on that, it would take them there. This is also hyperlinked. So that means when they click on this, it's just an image, but it actually takes them to a document. And then we go to, we've talked about touch and open, then we're talking about download, and it's practice opening the link, that would be hyperlinked. Download the USA Learns app to your phone, English 1 course. Practice open to touch the menu, that's also hyperlinked. They could see what it looks like. And then a couple of more vocabulary words to scroll up and scroll down. Swipe left and swipe right. And then follow up with maybe a group call. So this was in the idea that you have regularly scheduled check-ins with them. So that's one example of what micro-learning could look like, something that would take students, if they're clicking on those links and opening them or doing the activities, again, you might want to start that off with a short video presentation to guide them through it, show them how they're doing that on your own phone, and then ask them to do it on theirs. And okay, then this is another example. Then you invite them to take a break. So the idea here, hold on, I'm going to just get caught up on my notes here. The idea here was to honor the natural attention span of learners, which is another guideline from Mockingbird Education, who says that generally people have an attention span of about 5 to 20 minutes. So whether it's for designing for smartphones or on a larger computer screen, think about designing short learning sprints and give learners the opportunity to take a break, kind of give them permission to take a break. So what I thought was you could put something like this in this take a break, and then maybe that you could just stop it here, or take a break and then you can continue with another small learning chunk. I would recommend, if we're talking about asynchronous learning and having learners be able to pick up, resume where they left off, that it would stop here and they would open something else to go to the next learning chunk. Okay, so now here's an example of a math lesson. So I took this, Kim, I took this from your example, and I'll just go through it and show you, and then I'll ask Kim if you don't mind to jump on about the design. So I'll just go through it here. What is algebra? Where do we use it in real life? So this was a presentation. Wasn't what I put together here was not intended for students to input in it. It could be, but for this was just a presentation of a new topic. I won't speak, I'll just let you read it. So you want to make 75 face masks, and Kim put this in small chunks of information, an image above, a text below. The teacher could write information or explanations here, or ask the student to explain their thinking or understanding of a concept. And then I just put this in. It takes you 10 minutes to make one mask, put in a table. How much time will you need for 75 masks? Talk about X and Y as variables. What do you do to X to get Y? What is the rule in words? And then I just put the answer here. Multiply X times 10. Write the rule as an equation. 10X equals Y. This is algebra. Take a break. Okay, so one of the resources that I've shared with you at the end of this presentation gave some examples that I thought I'd share with you on low bandwidth alternatives. So high bandwidth was a video, but you can still shorten it and reduce the size and compress it. For basic cell phones, instead, you could provide a still image or provide a link for possible viewing on another device. If it's video conferencing, I know many of you are already doing this, you know this already, audio or phone chat. And if it's an audio file, provide a text summary for discussion. So a summary is the overarching structure is to provide micro-learning, make it self-paced, and have regularly scheduled check-ins. Simplify the content and plan the layout. As we discussed, the most important information is at the top. Use strategies that we discussed to improve readability. Use strategies to increase access. Make the navigation predictable and as easy as possible. Same with interaction. And before I go to questions and comments, I want to just say that here's some resources that I've used for this presentation. You can look at it. I'll go back and hyperlink some of that stuff. And if you wanted to extend your learning, this was an interesting research paper on design and assessment using smartphone applications in the classroom to improve students' learning, but it was really about designing an app. And I thought the article was interesting. I know that most teachers right now are putting in a ton of time creating learning content, but if ever you have some extra time, you might want to look at that. And in light of that, this is an app that I had shared some time ago, a website, Glide, where you can design your own apps. It takes all of the information from Google Sheets. So it's pretty cool if anybody has time, maybe in the summer, to explore those. Okay, I'm going to go out of the presentation and I'm going to come back to you. Okay, so my first question is, does that content make sense to you as far as creating things in micro learning chunks? Is it something that you think is doable for your learners? Maybe if you like the idea, go ahead and put a Y in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself and speak up. I have to say I was really hesitant. Thank you, Janet. I was struggling with the ESOL and the math examples because I didn't know if they seemed like too small of learning chunks. Yes.
It's funny you should mention the math, because I was trying to do it and it ended before I could. So my question is, if this is synchronous, I'm guessing, and Kim, jump in too, please, or anybody, because it's been 100 million years since I did an XY axis. I was looking at those numbers and saying, like, wait, what? So in that instance, would that be a moment where in real time, can you, if it's synchronous, can you use a whiteboard or Jamboard or Ginzy or anything to write the steps down, or to even use your cursor or your mouse to sort of say, okay, so this is just to walk people through? Because I got all sad again because I couldn't do it.
So you're talking about, are you talking about graphing that?
Yeah, the math exercise that you showed was a great exercise, but I immediately couldn't do it, and then I got sad.
Okay. So yes, to answer your question, yes, you could absolutely add a whiteboard there. In fact, I started it in Jamboard. The thing is just an image from Jamboard.
Thank you.
But yeah, and the math came from, my daughter was doing algebra, and she just couldn't understand why we use variables for anything. And her sentence was, like I'm sure all of the math teachers on this call have heard, was, "I'll never use this." So that's why I created that example, because I first had to say, yes, you will use it. Okay, others, and then I would like, yes, Angela.
Hi, Sherry. I have a question. I get the micro-learning and sort of one learning objective at a time. So when you introduce, so say you want to accomplish 5 things, usually you would maybe touch upon other learning objectives if you were doing this in a different setting. So if we say that one learning objective takes, say, 10 minutes, would you then create, and you want to do 3, would you create 3 different presentations and say to your students, by the time we meet on Friday, please view all of these 3 presentations? Or how would you, how do you organize micro-learning when you have big, ideas and big goals?
Yes, what I was envisioning, and I have to say, I don't want to claim to be an expert on this, but what I was envisioning was, if I was a teacher in the classroom, that I would have this lesson plan, like I would if I were in face-to-face. And then I would look at that lesson plan and I would say, okay, let me see what I can chunk out into a 10-minute chunk. And I would create that like we would probably normally do it on, especially in distance learning right now. We might be doing it on one large presentation. But to answer your question, I think, is yes, I would chunk it out into 10 minutes for one presentation, 10 minutes for another presentation or a document, whatever you're using, 10 minutes for another one, or, several consecutive ones, but small bite-sized. Yes. And then ask them, I think it's a process of negotiation with your learners at this point. Please jump in and give me your opinion, the others who are on this call, and say, like, how much time do you think you have? Do you think you can do 10 minutes a day? Okay, great. So how about by Friday you do, lesson 1, lesson 2, and lesson 3? Does that answer your question, Angela? Okay, good.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Others? Okay, Kim, can I call on you for a minute? Kim had shared a template for a an algebra lesson. I just changed the content. But I want to go back to it. Kim, can you speak to the design?
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to pull it up again. I can find it. Here it is. Wait a minute, sorry. Are you not seeing it yet? Okay. So I'm speaking of the design when I ask Kim that, because you notice that this is vertical and the size of a phone. Okay, Kim?
Yeah, so what I had, like when I was thinking back about in class or what, and how students are holding their phones and interacting with them, a lot of them are holding them in a vertical way rather than landscape. I don't know that it hugely matters as long as you're doing what you said, with just clearly communicating to them. But that was how I just originally was designing this, was so that it was in the shape of a cell phone that students are familiar with, rather than having to change the orientation. And then I also used the dark background because for myself, I can read a lot better when images are dark. My phone is in dark mode, so I really prefer to have a dark background with the lighter text. But I was thinking of, if it's, a parent who has like a young child that they're trying to get them to go to sleep, but they want to like do a quick lesson while they're waiting in the bedroom with the kid, then it would be better for it to be darker than lighter. So, just there's all kinds of considerations that just goes back to like, know your students, when are they trying to sneak this in? My son is wandering over right now as I'm talking to you.
Great. Okay, thank you, Kim.
Sure.
Yeah, I have to say, that when I put in the, let me go back to it so everybody knows what I'm talking about. When I put in the section header slides, I much prefer the blue and the white to the white and the black. Okay, other questions? Comments? Angela said in the chat that it's true, persons with vision issues, dark background is better. Okay, thank you, Angela, because I was trying to remember that and I couldn't remember what the shades were for it. Okay, I think I did time it right. Great. So 2 things is I want to remind everybody that you do have this slide presentation. Please reach out anytime to ask me questions. I'd like to know one thing before you hang up is, when you looked at it on your phone, did it seem to you like, oh, I can see how this makes sense because it's pretty clear and easy to read? I guess I just want to know if what I designed thinking for smartphones would work for you based on this model. Yes. Okay.
Sherry, this is Kim again. The only thing that I had trouble with is, I mean, I mentioned what I said before about going into present mode, but I thought that was a back button, and so I kept pressing it, but it was actually advancing the slide forward. So I was thinking, again, it depends on the learner and what kind of, like you had a great idea of having an intro video to navigate. But I wonder if like, swipe left or swipe right, might be a little clearer.
Yes, yes, exactly. I wanted to come back to that. So I wanted to tell you that they're not hot spots. Like when you can't touch them, they don't go anywhere. I did mention that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you could
I
actually
eventually figured it out.
Yeah, you could actually link them so they do. But I was initially thinking just so if in case they weren't familiar with swiping. That's what you were saying, right? Is that what?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that you have to clarify that. So it was something I put in later because I didn't have anything there. And I was like, well, if I was a student and doing this for the very first time, I might not know that I can swipe. So yes, you're right. You have to somehow show that, but you could change the words.
Yeah.
But they don't.
But also,
Go ahead.
I just thought the arrows were just another great example of being able to lessen that cognitive load. Like you had the words there too, but the having like a graphic or a visual image just really helps with the readability and quick understanding too. So that was really good.
Thanks, Kim. Let me catch up on a couple of comments here. So Alba said KET Fast Track is free for GED until the end of June. Newsella is free until the end of the year. Okay. KET can be accessed probably in a couple of different ways if you just Google it, but it's also accessed through PBS. Laura said designing pre, during, and post activities content to be presented also helps students not only organizational wise, but when performing at their own pace. I love that idea, Laura. Thank you. Good. Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. At the top of your screen, everybody, is a link to an evaluation. If you could complete that, I would really appreciate that. If anybody needs to leave now, great. And if anybody wants to just see how I put in those back buttons and link to those images, you can stay on and I'll show that to you now. Okay, so thank you all for joining. I'll go down the chat quickly. Great. Okay. So for anybody who wants to see how you put on those, Sabine, scroll up. Yeah, I'll get to you the evaluation. Hold on. Do I have it? Yeah. Here. Here's the link to the evaluation again. I'll open it up and make sure it's the right one. Yeah, good. Okay, so I put the link in.
Sorry,
yes.
I saw the link on your shared screen, but I'm not seeing it on my own. Sorry.
It's in the chat.
Okay, gotcha.
The chat? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, so let me just show you, if you want to quickly put in some navigational things, you don't want to have to put them on individual slides. So I'm going to share screen and show you how to do that. Okay, so here I am in my, not in presentation mode. And if I go up here to say view, and I click on the third option, which is master, I can see the master slides for this theme. So this is a theme that I chose. You could just start with blank slides. And for example, most of my things have the layout, which is title and then content. And so when it's here, title and content, all I had to do was on this slide, type in, put a little text box and add the word next, insert by going up here to insert, choose shape, choose arrow. I chose one of the arrows. It inserted here. I resized it. I'll go back to the text box in case anybody doesn't know where that is. It's up on your toolbar. If you hover, you'll see it says insert placeholder, and one of them is text box. You just click on that, you draw a text box. And because I'm in the master view, I only have to put this on one slide and it shows up on all of them. So here is my Section header, I did the same thing. I just changed the colors. I put in the words and I put in the arrows. And then when I'm in my actual presentation that I've created, those are there. So if you look, I don't know if you can see on your screen, but in the master layouts, I only did it to the layouts that I'm using. I wasn't using every possible layout. So I did it, but when you do it, you will put those words on to the things that you need. I hope that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to go out of there. And I'm going to show you also that, actually, when I put in this, let's just say this document. Now you could have just put in the link in words, but remember we're talking about touching and having things a little bit bigger and easier. So what I did was when I click on that image, I can go up to my ribbon, to my toolbar, and I click on Insert Link. And then I get my little dialog box. I copy and paste by Control C, Control V. I put a link in here. I put apply. And now when students click on that, but it would only work in present mode, which I'm not in right now, I've linked an image basically in slides. So once again, you can just insert a link like this in words, but if you want to link an image, just put in an image, insert an image. I know I'm going through this kind of quickly. Insert an image, then click on the image, click on your hyperlink button, put in your link, say apply, and it's hyperlinked. Okay. I'm going to go back here and ask if anybody has any questions. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for joining today. I want to remind you that please share this, make a copy, edit it any way you can. If you have your own examples for microlearning, that would be helpful. Please share them. I'm here Monday through Thursdays. I have drop-in hours. We also have a distance learning conversation on Tuesdays from 10 to 11, where we're kind of speaking more at a programmatic level. And if you're not on the all staff group list where you're getting all of these announcements, please reach out to me by email. And here's my email. Okay, I don't see any more questions coming in, so thank you all. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.